Tonight, they asked me to talk about growing vegetables in the winter and early spring. And aren't we fortunate to live in Orlando where we can grow 5 different vegetable crops every year? So let's think this through. So we plant a fall vegetable crop. We plant that around September, October, November, and that it contains things like squash and tomatoes and beans, but then it's going to get a little cold. And that's when we want to grow things like broccoli and cabbage and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and all those things. Anyone here like Brussels sprouts? It's quite the new vegetable, you know? It's the new black, I think. And a lot of chefs are using it all over the country. So we plant those crops, including things like cucumbers and other things. But we can do that starting in November, December, January. And then by that time we're harvesting because most of those crops grow around 60 to 65 days. And then we plant another crop. So we can grow another crop of broccoli and cabbage and things like that. Now it can be a little confusing. I understand that. Now I'm from Ohio originally. So when we plant in May in Ohio, we have one crop and we harvest it all summer long, and then we take it out in October. That's all we had. But here we have 5 different crops. So it's going to be a little confusing. So when this is all over, on a sheet that I have over on the table, I've made it really easy for you. By month, I've described all the different things that you can grow or you should be growing in your garden. So if you look at November, look at all those, gosh, I should be growing everything right now because this is a perfect time of the year for us to grow things. And then after that winter crop, we have another spring. So we grow the tomatoes and the squash and the beans and the cucumbers and the beets and all that. And then comes summer. It's a hot, long, dry summer. We don't want to be out there. The plants don't want to be out there. But aren't we lucky that there are a few plants that like it, the heat? You know, there's peanuts, sweet potatoes, black-eyed peas, and my personal favorite, okra. Fried okra. Is that the best thing in the world? You like fried okra? Oh yeah. What? Raw is good. Yeah, it tastes green, doesn't it? It tastes fresh. But we don't eat that stewed okra stuff, do we? We don't eat stewed okra, do we? That's some nasty stuff, stewed okra. You eat stewed okra? Oh. Ooh, fried okra is good. Yeah. So all summer long, we're growing that stuff that not many people want to grow. Black-eyed peas, okras, sweet potatoes, things like that. And then we start the fall garden all over again. So we're going to talk about winter and early spring vegetables. Now, we have a small little vegetable garden at Leu Gardens. It's probably maybe twice the size of this stage. And right now we are growing cabbage and tomatoes and cauliflower and kale and broccoli and all those things, okay? So what we have done since 2009 at Leu Gardens is try a variety of different types of varieties of plants. So when someone comes to us and says, Robert, I'm thinking of growing a vegetable garden. What's the easiest one to grow? And I say beans, right? Beans are pretty easy. Put a hole in the ground, drop the seed in the hole, cover it up, water it. 5 days later, it's up out of the ground. About 25 or 30 days, maybe even 40 days later, there's beans. 15 days after that, they're on your dinner plate. Pretty easy to grow, okay? But which ones grow best in Florida? We grew 50 different varieties for you. And after growing all of those, we say, this one is the best, all right? So tonight what we're gonna do, I'm gonna go through each little vegetable that we can grow in the wintertime, and I'm going to give you those varieties that perform best. And also, I'm going to give you some little hints on how to grow them, because some of these vegetables have little quirks. Some of them have bugs that are very specific to that particular plant that you need to know about. But the bottom line is this, and I want to keep it simple. You can do this. A lot of people have never grown a plant from a seed before, and it's a little daunting. You go to the library right here in this building. You go to the section for vegetable gardening in Florida. There's probably 10 books there. You go to the store and you look at the magazines. There's probably 10 different magazines on growing vegetables. The problem is very few of them are going to be good for Florida. Because if you've ever moved here from somewhere else, whether you've moved here from further south or from upper north coming down here, you know that growing things here is totally different than where you grew them before. So that's where this chart that you'll have afterwards will help a little bit. So you ready to get started? This is going to be a journey for you, because as we grow these vegetables, you may have success on some, you may not have success on others. The most important thing you can do is to write the information down. So year by year, you're going to be writing in a journal. Now that journal can be a fancy thing, you know, that you buy at the store or somebody gave to you as a present, or it can be something as simple as a spiral-bound notebook. But the important thing is that you write these things down. Because I don't know about you, but you know, as the days go by, I'm getting a little more forgetful, and I don't remember everything I was supposed to. And sometimes, if I find something that I really like, a particular packet of seeds, a bean or something that really grows well, sometimes I'll staple it right in the journal itself. So when I get ready to plant beans next time, when I'm flipping back through all my notes, I say, oh yeah, I remember that bean. It produced 5 crops of beans. I'm going to grow that again. So, you ready to get started? Okay, let's talk about beans. It's one of those, I've never planted a garden before. What vegetable should I plant? Beans are number one. Like I said, dig a little hole up to your first knuckle, drop a bean or two in there, cover it up, water it, bean comes up. Pretty easy, okay? So there's different kinds of beans. So one of the really fine beans that a lot of the chefs like to use is what they call a French fillet bean. They're a little bit smaller, they're not as big around, but they're very full of flavor, and they grow on bushes, okay? Then we have the bush bean, which we're all familiar with. Of all the beans that we tried, Strike by far is the best one. Sometimes when you plant a bean, a bush bean, and you pull the beans off, sometimes they don't come off really well, and sometimes you damage the plant. The great news about Strike is that when you pull them, they come off very easy, and as long as you keep them watered, they'll produce another crop. Think about this. All the while, this is what we need to be thinking about. What is a plant's primary purpose in life? To recreate itself, to produce seeds so it can produce offspring. So what are we doing when we pick beans? The plant is producing the beans to reproduce itself. And when you pick the beans, what is the plant thinking?
It needs to produce more.
Gosh darn it. I had all these seeds. Somebody just took them. I have to produce more seeds. So they're going to produce more beans. And then you pick those. What does the plant say? I've got to produce more beans. I got to produce more seeds. Well, the great thing about Strike, it'll do this over and over and over again, up to 5 times. Some of the beans that you get in the store that aren't for Florida, you pick them, you'll tear them apart, or sometimes they just won't produce the number of beans that you like. But clearly, Strike, head and shoulders, is the best of them all. Now, what about pole beans? I like pole beans. You know why? Because you don't have to bend over. They're right here. They're looking you in the eye. And as I get a little older too, I've discovered that I don't grow just green pole beans anymore because the eyes aren't quite as good as they used to be. So I grow purple green beans or yellow green beans because I can see yellow on a pole bean. I don't have to bend over, they're right there. And I can pick and pick and pick over and over and over again. Right now, on a teepee that I have at the gardens, I have a couple sticks or bamboo poles, and those bamboo poles have one seed at the bottom of every one, and those beans automatically curl up those pole beans to the top, and they're beginning to produce. They just don't produce one bean. Those bamboo stakes are 6 feet tall. There's probably 15 to 20 beans on every pole. And it only takes up this much space. So if you don't have much space, rather than grow out, maybe we ought to grow up. And that way you're not stepping on the vines, you're not stepping on the plants either. So this pole bean called Roma is flat. It can grow up to 10 inches long and still be nice and tender, but it's flat. These are the kind of beans you see in soups sometimes, especially Italian soup. They're flat. You can cut them up in 1-inch pieces and throw them in the soup. Now, there is another variety of pole beans, but it's yellow Roma beans. So not only are they big, not only are they pole beans, but they're yellow, so I can see them. I don't have to go hunting for them, and I don't have to do this bending over. Now, I know exercise is a good thing, and that's one of the reasons why we garden, but a little bit, everything in moderation, So, pole beans, Roma. Now, any of you like to make soup? It's getting a little cold now, right? We're going to be, it was like 55 degrees this morning. So, I expected to see frost out there. So I'm looking, maybe I'm starting to make some soup now because it's getting really cold. It's like 55 degrees, so we're making soup. Well, you can make soup beans. You can grow soup beans. So what we do with strike is, or any bush beans, we grow them when they're green. We pick them before they're mature. They're nice, soft, and tender. But with shelling beans, and this one is a really neat one called Tiger Eye. See how it has that little circle in there? Isn't that kind of neat? They're very pretty. So you grow them and then you let them mature on the bush so they become dry. And once that pod becomes dry, then you can harvest those, and the beans are hard. They're like little pebbles. And you put them in a mason jar, you put them in a plastic bag and store them on the shelf. And when you get ready to make soup, you take a handful of those beans and you throw those beans in there. Think of how pretty that soup and how attractive that soup will be with these Tiger Eye beans in it. And you grew it yourself. That's the fun part.
Absolutely.
I grew these myself. Pretty neat. There's a couple other beans. Yard-long bean is very popular with Asian communities. They can grow up to 30 inches long. That's long. They're not real good at 30 inches long. They're kind of tough, but they'll grow that big. You want to catch them when they're about 18 inches long. They're really good. And the unique thing about this one called red noodle, unlike most of the beans that you get, if you grow like a purple bush bean, when you cook it, it turns green. So you're going to lose that color. But with red noodle, when you chop it up and use it in stir fries or use it in soups, it keeps that red color. So in addition to having a pretty good bean that you can chop, you don't need to pick many, do you? If you have a bean that's 18 inches long and you have 2 or 3 people in your family, you only need to harvest 3 or 4, and you can feed the whole family. And these grow on poles as well, or fences. You can grow them on a fence, grow them on a pole, it doesn't make any difference. This one's just kind of fun. It kind of grows in a crescent shape, like a crescent moon. It's kind of pretty. And then this one, unlike a lot of other beans which just have regular bean foliage, just has little arrow-shaped foliage. But sometimes you just grow things because they're pretty. What about chickpeas? Hummus? Anybody eat hummus? What do they make hummus out of? Chickpeas. That's the bush for a chickpea. Doesn't even look like a bean, does it? I was surprised first time I planted it. I said, something must be going wrong here. I must have got the wrong seeds. Because this certainly isn't a bean, but sure enough, puts on little pods. And in those pods, there's 3 or 4 of those little seeds. And then you can make things from it, or you can put them right into the garden. It's kind of fun. Or chickpeas. So where do you get chickpea seeds? Where do you get navy beans? Where do you get pinto beans? Where do you get frijoles negros? Where do you get those? Publix. Go to the soup aisle, the soup bean aisle, those bags. Now, if you go to a store and you buy vegetable seeds, you're going to pay $3 or $4 for about 100 seeds. Okay? If you go to Publix or any other grocery store, you buy a bag of frijoles negros or navy beans or whatever beans you want to grow. Black-eyed peas, every one of them will come up. How many seeds are in there? A couple thousand? For $1.25. So if you want to grow for the neighborhood, you know, that's something we need to think about. Not everybody in your neighborhood has fresh food. So instead of just planting 1 row of beans, maybe we plant 2 rows of beans for that nice lady down the street. Plant a row for the hungry is a national program where people like you and I who grow food sometimes plant a little more for somebody in the neighborhood who can't quite afford it or doesn't have the space to do it. So where do you get chickpea seeds? From the soup bean aisle. First time I saw that, we were over at a high school. We were helping the students put in a vegetable garden that they would harvest, and then they would cook the food for the teachers. And he took out his rototiller, we rototilled everything up, and then he took out a bag of beans, black-eyed peas. Mr. Brooks, what are you doing with those black-eyed peas? I'm going to plant them. But Mr. Brooks, those are soup beans. You can't grow plants of soup beans. Well, sure you can. Now, I had a degree in horticulture. I knew everything there was to know about growing vegetables, right? Wrote the book on how to grow vegetables. The man showed me, just drop them in the ground, they come up, boom. 60 days later, you're harvesting black-eyed peas. See? You learn something new every day. Every day you learn something. So that's kind of pretty in a way. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes you'll get bugs. I don't care what you do, how hard you try, you're going to get bugs. And sometimes you can't help it. So on beans, they are eating the plants up in the gardens right now. See, what they do is they cut a little edge off, and then what do? They roll it over themselves. So they hide. So the lizards and the birds and humans can't see them. And in the meantime, they're just eating away. So the question is, if you look at this damage on the beans, on the bean leaves, it's not much, just a little bit. So my question is this: do you have to get rid of them? Or is it going to have a negative impact on the quality or the quantity of the fruit that you're trying to grow?
Yes.
Probably not. That's a little caterpillar. He's not going to eat that. Look what he's doing. He's just eating a little bit of the edge. There's all the rest of this leaf to photosynthesize and create energy for that plant to grow. Maybe it's not such a big deal. maybe we want to let that guy just do his own thing. Live and let live, you know? If he really bothers you, what can you do?
Pick him up, throw him in the soil.
Yeah, you just go up here, you got that leaf over him, you know he's under there, right? Because he's curled the leaf up over, just pinch it. You don't even see him, so he's not gonna squash all over everything, just pinch it, okay? Don't have to use sprays, don't have to do anything extraordinary, just pinch it, it's okay. If you have to. But the bottom line is he's not gonna bother the quality or the quantity of your fruit, so why not let him go? That's not true with everything though, right? Now, this is what a bean looks like. You plant it in the ground. It's starting to come up. Oh, that looks pretty good right there. That's a little bean. If I'm a brown thrasher bird, or I'm a cardinal, or a catbird, that looks pretty good. Nice and fresh, tender little seed. I think I'm going to eat him. So, but when he does, when he pulls that bean right there, he pulls the whole thing out of the ground. So sometimes birds are good in that they're going to eat those caterpillars we just saw. So I have a bird bath in my garden to encourage birds to come by. But while these beans are coming up out of the ground, you want to make sure the birds stay away because they're going to pull those plants up. Now, how do you do that? I've seen people use silver pie pans, you know, the little aluminum pie pans. I've seen them use little clickety-clack. I've seen everything. But let me tell you what works the best. Go to my daughter's toy box. And in that toy box, there's a monster. And the bird doesn't know what it is. He's never seen it before. And this will scare the daylights out of a bird. What in the world is that? I don't know, but I'm not hanging around. And so this is out, that's a plastic lizard out of my daughter's toy box, all right? So you leave it out here, you leave it in the garden until all those beans come up all the way, and then you start getting what we call true leaves, or the leaves that look like the leaves before, you know, just regular bean leaves. And once that little bean is gone, then you can put your buddy back in the toy box. And the birds are going to start doing their thing again. They're going to come back. Ooh, there's a nice little, there's a fat caterpillar. I'm going to eat that because he's eating the daylights out of my tomato. So sometimes you don't have to go to extraordinary measures to keep your buddies away. What about beets? Anybody here like beets? Well, I didn't see you raise your hand over there. There's always somebody who doesn't like beets. My kids won't eat them either. They say, oh, Dad, they taste like dirt. Question is, how do you know what dirt tastes like? But that's a whole different story. Yeah. So there's a couple different kinds of beets. This is the old-fashioned one, Detroit dark red. Now, beets are really a unique sort of plant. And because when you plant one seed, 2 or 3 plants come up. How does that work? Well, it's in that special family of plants with Swiss chard and a few other plants. There's multiple seeds in that one big seed. So you plant one, but sometimes 2 or 3 plants come up. The important thing is when those plants come up and they get a little bigger, you're going to have to thin those out because you can only have one beet happening at a time. Otherwise, they're going to grow too close together and you won't get any beets. So plant one beet seed every 3 or 4 inches apart, and they'll start to grow, and you'll get these beautiful dark red beets. Beautiful. Taste like dirt. Then you have one called bull's blood. It's just a regular beet, but look how dark and beautiful that foliage is. Now, all the beet foliage, whether it's Detroit dark red or the bull's blood, can be used in salads raw. Imagine how pretty the leaves of that in a salad would be. Because salads don't have to be ugly anymore. We have enough things that can go into a salad they can be kind of colorful and pretty. So you can put these raw in salad, or you can cook them as well. And this just produces a regular red beet. But we use this a lot in containers with annuals and perennial flowers because the foliage is so pretty. We think it's worthwhile putting into it. And look at this guy. I love this guy because it's easy to peel and you get multiple slices off of one like you would a carrot. So instead of just getting a few like you would on a round beet like this, you're going to get a lot of different slices off of that. And these grow really, really well. And again, the foliage you can use either in salads raw or cooked. But this has got to be my favorite. This is what I call the target beet. It's really not, but it's called Chickpeas. And when you cut it across like this, it comes up with these red and white circles. Now, when you cook it, it's all going to turn red. But this one is so sweet. All you have to do, I just wash it off in the garden and eat it raw, right in the garden. It's so sweet and tasty. But when you cook it, it all turns red. But imagine if you're creating, you're making a little fresh vegetable platter. So you've got carrots and you've got beans and you've got some of these beets on there, and you dip that into ranch dressing or something. How good that would taste. Fresh, clean, wow. Yeah, really a neat beet to grow. Broccoli. I don't know of an easier plant to grow, you know. Now broccoli takes some space. So if you have a tiny little backyard, broccoli is going to be tough because they like 2 feet by 2 feet. They like to stretch out. They need some elbow room. And you want to pick them when they're about this stage. You don't want to wait too long. Now, the one that we like the most is a variety called Goliath. Now, when you go to the store to buy transplants, you'll see some called Pac-Man, you'll see some called Lieutenant. Those are fine. But our trials have shown Goliath to be the best. Number one, the heads are very large. They're double the size of a broccoli plant you'll find in a grocery store. Okay? But this is the important thing. Once you harvest that, and you're going to go down 2 or 3 leaves below the flower head, and that's what this is, right? This is just a big flower. We're picking it before it blooms. There's lots of flowers in there. So we're going to come down 2 or 3 leaves, and we're going to cut it off. We're going to cut it on an angle, so the water, when it rains, is going to kind of flow off and not stand there. But what it will do, where these leaves are here, it'll sprout more flowers. And on Pac-Man and Lieutenant and some of the other broccolis, they're going to be tiny. They may be an inch across, but with Goliath, when you harvest it, look at the size of those side sprouts. This is where we cut it 3 weeks before, and now it's sprouting back out. Those are 3 and 4 inches across. The side shoots are that big. So it lives up to its name, Goliath. It's huge. So that's a really good one for this area. And this, how about that one? This is a really unique one. This is called Veronica. And it's a big plant. It needs lots of elbow room too. But the great thing is each one of these little pointed things, if you're out in the garden, you can, at the very bottom, you can break these off and just have a little snack out in the garden. So you don't have to pick the whole head. And you cook this just like cauliflower or just like broccoli. Some people think it's a broccoli, some people think it's a cauliflower. I don't care what it is. It's good. It tastes good. But when you're out there, you can just knock one of these off and have it out there in the garden. It's really tasty. So this is about when, a little about when you want to pick them, right? This is what you see in the store. This one may be a little past, but if you let it go, this is what happens. Now, if you let this go, what's going to happen? It's going to produce seed. And what do you do with that seed? You save it. You put it in an envelope and you put it in the vegetable crisper of your refrigerator. That seed will last you 4 or 5 years. You won't have to buy any more broccoli seeds. So this is a little past. You can actually eat these. Take these flowers, put them in salads. It's very nice and very pretty. Okay, you don't see many Brussels sprouts down here. And one of the reasons being is that Brussels sprouts really like it cold. When I was up in Ohio, we never picked broccoli or never picked Brussels sprouts until it had some snow on it. So we're not going to pick any here, are we? They will grow, and they'll grow very well. But this is a plant that's going to take a very, very long time to grow. From the day you plant the seed, it's going to take 130 days before you can pick that first little cabbage. Okay? That takes some commitment. That's twice the amount of time it takes to grow broccoli. Twice. So wherever you put it, you're going to want to make sure that's where it's going to be for a very long time, because it takes that long. The real secret is to keep taking all these lower leaves off and just have the leaves at the top, kind of like a bouquet. All the other leaves down the side come off. And then it's going to take all the energy and put into these little guys. Okay? But it's going to take a very, very long time. Now my family is from Ireland and England, and we can't survive without cabbage. That's just the way it is. And so there's lots of different cabbages out there for you. One thing that we really like to stress is that there are varieties of vegetables for you, even if you have a small space. So, you know, I said if you're going to grow broccoli, you need lots of space. You don't need a big broccoli plant. You can get small ones. So everything that you like and everything that you want to grow comes in a smaller variety. You just have to find it. So this pixie, what is that, about the size of a softball? That's as big as it gets. And if there's only 1 or 2 people in your family, that's enough for dinner, right? You don't need a big honker cabbage. You need just a little guy. That way you don't waste anything. But look at these. This is Savoy. See how the leaves are all crinkled and how pretty that is? That's a great one. And look at this one. This one isn't even round. This is sort of pointed. And we have discovered that filterkraut makes the absolute best sauerkraut. So if you're into fermenting, you're into kimchi or any of those fermenting vegetables, that was a really, really good one for me. But look at it. Isn't that a beautiful plant? That Deeden red. Okay. So you're very careful, and you either plant your seeds in little pots, and then when they're big enough, you take them and you plant them out into the garden. Things like carrots and beans you want to sow directly, but things like cabbage and broccoli you can grow in little containers, and then little pots. Maybe you've got some old pots laying around the house, and when they get big enough, then you transplant it into the garden. Now you've grown that little thing for 2, maybe 3 weeks from seed. You're so proud. That's your little baby. And you take it out of the pot very carefully, and you go into the garden and you dig a little hole for it, and you put that plant in there, you water it with a watering can, and you stand back, and oh, that is so, I grew that. I am so proud. In a couple weeks, I'm going to be able to harvest that and have it for the, see, I get goosebumps talking about that. I'm going to take it, put it on the table, okay? You wake up the next morning, you go out to your vegetable garden, you're going to go out and look at your cute little cabbage that you just planted, and it's laying on its side. Something has chopped that stem in half and killed your little baby plant. So then you start looking. You're looking, you can't find anything. Don't know what it could be. Must be a rabbit. No, if it was a rabbit, it would eat the whole thing. So what is it? It's probably an armyworm. Armyworms are nasty little guys. They're about 2 inches long. They eat at night. They don't want to look at you. They don't want you to find them. So they eat at night, and as the sun comes up, they go back underneath the ground. They go underneath the leaves or they hide. Okay? They're very difficult to control. Unless you've got some paper towel rolls or toilet paper rolls around. Because what you're going to do, you're going to create an armyworm barrier. So here you've got a paper towel, you're going to cut it, and you're going to slit it. Put it right up the side, and then wrap it around that plant. You're going to put a little bit of it down into the ground, and you're going to make a little collar that looks just like that. I forgot to tell you that armyworms are lazy. They're not going to crawl over that collar to get to your plant. They're not even going to eat these leaves out here. They're going to come up, they're going to see that, and they're going to go someplace else. So once this starts to grow, and once this stem gets nice and tough, this will probably decompose anyway. It's paper, right? It's going to decompose, so it's organic. You don't have to worry about that. And it keeps the armyworms away. So if you go out there in the morning and everything's laying down, chances are it was an armyworm. And you just need to give some little collars, and that will solve the problem. Carrots. Personal favorite of mine. I like them. And the real simple hint for carrots is don't plant them too deep. These are great. Baltimore is about 6 inches long. You sow the seeds. These are round Romeos. These are great for containers. You don't have a lot of room, so you're growing something out on your patio in a red terracotta pot or a 5-gallon bucket. These are great. These are about the size of a golf ball. How much carrot do you need for dinner, right? You don't need a lot, or in your salad. And these are Royal Chantney. These grow usually about 4 to 5 feet long, and they're nice and thick. The problem with carrots is they take a long time to germinate. So you're going to take a shovel and you're going to make a little row and you're going to make it nice and smooth. And then you go in there with the hoe and you make a furrow, and you take your carrot seeds and you put them out there and you cover them with the usual 1/2 inch or so or inch of dirt. You kick it over with your foot, and you expect those seeds to come up. They're not going to come up. It's too deep. So you create a nice seed bed. You dig it up, you rake it smooth. It's nice and soft and comfy. And then you take that hoe or rake, whatever it is you have, and you take that handle and you lay it down and you simply step on it. You take that handle up. What do you have? Got a little furrow. Take those carrot seeds, you sprinkle in that little furrow, and then you water it with a watering can. You do not cover it. Now the other problem is they take so long to germinate. Sometimes it takes 3 weeks. And if you're like me and you don't mark your rows sometimes, there's a perfectly good unused row of soil in my garden. I'm going to have to plant something else because clearly there's nothing here, or it would have come up by now. So then I go ahead and plant beans or something, and 3 weeks later you start to see little green things coming out with your beans. Those are carrots. They take sometimes 4 weeks for them to come up out of the ground. So what can I do to remind myself that I've got carrots there? Radishes. I hate radishes. They're hot, they're nasty, I hate them. But they grow really fast. They germinate in 3 days. So you go ahead and you plant your carrot seeds, just like I said, and then you take a radish seed. They're really big. You take a radish seed, poke a little hole, drop that radish seed in there, cover it up. Go 12 inches down the same row where your carrots are, plant another radish seed right there. Every 12 inches, you plant a radish seed. They're going to come up in 3 days. So instead of nothing, you now see a plant every 12 inches. That's going to let me know something's growing there. And by the time the radishes are ready to be harvested, which is about 45 days, the carrots are up and you know where they are. And so you can harvest your radishes and won't bother the carrots. Pretty slick, huh? Yes. Yeah, that's 50 years of growing vegetables. That's how we figured that out. Cauliflower. Oh, I love cauliflower. And it's one of those things, you plant the seed, a little pot, you grow it up, you get ready, you plant it out in the garden, you walk away, boom, you get cauliflower. In the old days, they'd be big, big plants. And you see this little, what we call a curd. This is a curd. Kind of like curd, like cottage cheese is a curd. You see it down in there. Oh, then I've got to take those leaves. You got to gather the leaves up and wrap them with a rubber band or a piece of string, because the sun is going to get in there and it's going to ruin that curd. It's going to change the color and it's not going to be very tasty. It's going to be bitter. Not anymore. You just plant that seed, it comes up, you put it in the garden. It looks just like this growing in the garden. You don't have to wrap it anymore. So not only is it good to eat, but it's pretty. Look at those different colors. So we go back to that vegetable tray we were making. Remember the purple seeds and the Chioggia beet, which is nice and pretty. Now we're going to have purple cauliflower on that plate. We're going to have green cauliflower on that plate. That's going to be pretty, and it's going to taste good because you just harvested it 15 minutes ago. Now, I can tell you a funny story. Well, you'll decide whether it's funny or not. My daughter called me on the phone. Never grown a vegetable before in her life. Tears, crying, sobbing. Something wrong with my cauliflower. What's wrong? It's yellow. Something's wrong. No, it's called cheddar. I gave you a cheddar, a yellow colored cauliflower to grow in your garden. Well, it's okay? Yeah. Is it going to taste like cheese? No. But it's going to be yellow. That's going to be pretty on a plate, isn't it? Yeah. And it's going to have the same flavor. All these have exactly the same flavor, but they're just pretty to look at. Celery. You know, Sanford, celery capital of the world. Did you know that? Yep. That's why you go into Sanford, you see Celery Road, Celery Street. The reason all the trains, and we have all these tracks in the Sanford and all along the St. Johns River, is that people would grow celery. They'd put them in wooden boxes, you know, little crates, and by train, they would ship them to the St. Johns River, where they would get on a paddle boat, and they would go to the port at the ocean, and then they go off all over the world. Celery, capital of the world. If you can't grow celery here, you can't grow it anywhere. And it's easy. Again, little seeds in a pot. Wait till they get 4 or 5 pairs of regular leaves that look like it, and just put it right out into the garden. Nothing you have to do. Now, to get the nice, real blanched white, you know, they take soil and they pull it up around it so the sun doesn't get to it and it changes it to white. But you don't need to do that. Just plant celery seeds out there and boom, you get celery. Is there anything better than working out in the garden? You just rip off a piece of celery and eat it in the garden. You just grew that. You planted that seed 60 days ago, and you're in your garden eating celery and beans and cauliflower, and yeah, you get the picture.
Tastes more buttery.
Now this one's kind of unique. This is called celeriac, and I really encourage people to grow those plants that they know they're going to eat. There's nothing more heartbreaking as a person who grows this food. I grow food for my family. I got 4 children. I want them to eat fresh vegetables. So I grow the perfect broccoli. It is gorgeous. It's tight, it's green, it's big enough to pick. I pick it, take it in the house, nobody eats it. Why did I just waste all that space and all that energy growing something I knew they weren't going to eat? I do, however, recommend that you try something new every time you put in a new crop. So if you're used to growing green beans, maybe you want to grow some wax beans, yellow beans. It's okay. Maybe in addition to growing turnips, maybe you want to grow some celery for the first time. Or if you're really adventuresome, you're way out there, you want to grow this thing called celeriac. Now this is from Europe, and it makes a big bulb. This bulb is probably 4 inches across, maybe the size of my fist. And it's got celery stalks coming out of the top of it, so you can use it just like celery. But what you do is you peel this and then you grate it, and you can use it with other things, or you can chop it up and cube it. It has a very, very slight celery flavor to it. So it doesn't have the real strong in-your-face celery. It's just nice soft flavor. And it grows equally as well and easy as the regular celery does. Okay. I'm going to tell you right now that growing cucumbers in Florida is tough. It is hard. There are more bugs and more diseases than you can possibly imagine are going to attack your cucumbers. So what do? Let me tell you a quick story. I go to the Home Depot. I get a package of seeds. It's called Market More. Oh, I've heard that before. Grew that in Ohio. Plant the Market More seeds. The cucumbers come up. Get about 4 feet high, because I'm growing them on a fence, get about 4 feet high. All of a sudden, I wake up one morning and they've got little brown spots all over the top of the leaves. And then a week later, the plant's dead and I don't have one lousy cucumber. Happened time after time after time. So finally, I had this one company that I used called Harris Seed Company. So I was in a bad mood. Called up Harris Seed Company on the phone. I'd like to talk to your cucumber expert, knowing full well that there was no such thing, right? Because there can't possibly be a cucumber expert, right? Yes, sir. I'll get him right on the phone for you. Now what am I going to do? What questions am I going to ask this guy? So he comes on the phone. Yes, sir. How can I help you? Hi, this is Robert. I live in Orlando, and I'm trying to grow cucumbers, and every time they get about 4 feet high, they die. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. What kind of cucumber are you growing, Mr. Bowden? And he said, I'm growing Market More. He laughed. I don't think it's funny. I mean, I've done this a dozen times, and my cucumbers keep dying. He said, Mr. Bowden, you live in Orlando, you live in Florida, heat, humidity. Why in the world are you growing Market More? Because that's what they're selling at the store. So I just picked it up, paid the $1.25 and planted them, and they died. I've done it a dozen times. Mr. Bowden, there are too many diseases and too many bugs in Florida for you to plant a cucumber that doesn't have any built-in resistance to diseases. We're not talking GMOs. We're talking about taking a characteristic of one plant and a characteristic of another plant, and you cross the two, and you're going to get a plant that's going to be resistant, whether it's diseases or bugs, okay? He said, why in the world are you growing Market More? And I said, that's what I could buy. You have to buy plants They're going to be resistant to diseases and insects. That's the first step to insect and disease control. Get those plants that have a built-in resistance to them. So, we tried 30 different cucumbers. Pickles, slicers, oriental types, okay, Asian types. Dasher 2. If you don't remember anything else tonight, Dasher 2 is the most disease-resistant cucumber in the world today. Now, I can tell you that in the last 3 weeks, I have harvested 2, not 1, but 2 bushels of cucumbers on a fence that is 15 feet long, and the fence is 6 feet high. 2 bushels. Do you know how many cucumbers that is? That's a lot. That's all I can tell you. It's a lot, more than I could eat. And the reason I was able to do that, and it hasn't died yet, it's still producing, I picked 6 more today, is that this has built-in resistance to disease. That's what you have to have. So don't go to the store and just buy something, because it's not going to work here in Florida. Yes, sir.
You said that the disease protectors, are they done by man?
Some plants show a resistance to a certain disease. It's a genetic anomaly. And so, oh look, that plant right there. I've planted tens of thousands of these cucumber seeds, and that one right there shows some resistance. I'm going to be real careful with that one, and I'm going to take that one, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to cross it with this guy over here that produces cucumbers that doesn't have any prickly spines on it. And hopefully when I cross these two, and the resulting seed from that is going to, one of those 10,000 seeds is going to produce a cucumber that not only doesn't have the prickles on it, but is also disease resistant. So it's natural. It's just, it's a natural crossbreeding using pollen. There's nothing scientific about it. Yes, ma'am.
Are most of the diseases that you're talking about soil-borne? Are most of the diseases that you're talking about soil-borne?
No. A lot of them are airborne. Downy mildew, number 1, is airborne. And it sporulates or grows on the bottom side of the leaves. You don't even know it's there. And then one day you wake up and you see this little odd-shaped spot. It's not round. It's like an octagonal spot, or just a spot. Then next day there's more and there's more and there's more. It's been there for several days, maybe even up to a week, but now it's starting to show through the top of the leaf. Once it gets to that point, that plant's already dead.
Wow.
It's gone. Yeah. So I can tell you that Dasher 2 is the most disease-resistant plant of cucumbers that you can get and buy and grow in Florida, all right? I like pickles, so I want to grow pickles. Did the same thing. We tried 30 different kinds. We found that Eureka has the most disease-resistant of any cucumber that we tried. Now, once we figured that out, then we could kind of play around with some other things, just to try things. This is one called Cucina. It's an Italian form, and what's unique about this, it grows in a bunch, like grapes. Usually they're solitary. There's one flower, one cucumber. These grow in bunches like grapes. Find it kind of cool. And this guy, see all those little bumps? Every one of those is a little prickle. And so they're kind of weird to pick them at first because you think they're going to hurt. They don't. You can just rub them off. But it is the crunchiest cucumber we have tested in all of our trials. This thing, I mean, you could hear somebody bite into this a mile away. But it's weird because it has those little prickles all over it. Okay? So that's a long story for a short question. Yeah.
The Eureka, are they the best ones for thickening?
Yes. It's the one that will grow here and the one that will produce lots and lots of cucumbers. And again, we're growing cucumbers up. We're growing it on a fence, we're growing it on something. Because if you grow them on the ground, it's hard to find those cucumbers. And what are you doing when you're stepping in those vines? You're stepping on the vines themselves. So let's grow up. That way you just kind of, you're looking, just like with pole beans. You're not stepping on their vines. They'll last a very long time. We're only up to C so far. We got to go all the way to the squash yet. So this is the female flower. You can see right here is the little fruit on the back and the female flower here. And this is the male flower. So you're gonna have to have both, obviously, to get the fruit. There you go. That is downy mildew. And like I said, you see they're not round, but all the disease is on the back side of the leaves. And once it gets to this point, your plant is dead. There's nothing you can do to bring it back. You just have to take it off and plant in another location. Because these have spores on the bottom, and all those spores drop to the ground, and when you try to grow them again, they're gonna get poisoned. And then this guy, right at the tip of every cucumber, all that new growth is starting to expand. There's a little bud in there, and this little guy will get in there and start eating all those leaves and those real tender buds. So again, all you have to do is squeeze it, and you'll get rid of them. You can use other things like Dipel, which is an organic insecticide that kills worms. Yes, sir.
Is downy mildew only to cucumber?
Oh no.
Okay.
I wish that were the case.
What are the plants that
Squash and tomatoes. But squash and cucumbers are number one. Yep. This is not how you buy cucumbers. You aren't going to eat this. Each one of these cups is $3, and nothing's going to grow from that. Save your money. Look at these. There's 12 cucumbers in that little pot. You think any of those are going to grow? No. You just spent $3 for a pot full of dirt. They have to be spaced out. There's a certain amount of energy that they require in the soil, so you've got to spread them out at least every 6 inches. So none of these are going to grow you vegetables. That's why you want to grow from seed. And it's easy to, all you have to do is go online or go to a garden center. We go to a feed store, like Palmer's Feed Store down in Paramount. We go there and we can get 1,000 mustard seeds for $1. And I put those in the refrigerator, they'll last me 5 years. They also know good varieties to grow here in Florida. Collards. Oh. I have collards in my garden that have lasted 3 years. Now, not everybody knows how to grow collards or how to harvest collards. Now, I've been growing vegetables for a very long time, so I just assume that everybody knows how to harvest collards. You go out to the garden and you harvest the lower leaves. And you go to the next plant, you take a couple lower leaves off of that one. The next plant, a couple leaves off of that one. Then when you cook it, you take that heavy spine out and then you cut it up and you put it in a pot, usually with like smoked neck or bone or something, for a little flavor. So when I said, somebody, would you go out and harvest me some collards? When I came back, they had the entire plant laying on my tabletop. I just spent 100 days growing that plant. It's supposed to last me another 2 years anyway, and it didn't make it. But you use these lower leaves. Again, each individual plant takes 3 feet by 3 feet. It'll grow in the winter, it'll grow in the summer. It's not that particular. You just need to feed it every 3 months or so and make sure it gets plenty of water. and lots of full sun. Well, kale is so popular now, and it's like a superfood. Everybody puts kale into smoothies and everything, and there's lots of different varieties. We really like this one because it's very attractive. It's called dinosaur kale, and it has that blue-green look to it. It's all puckered, which is nice. Look how pretty that is. This is in the garden at Leu Gardens. See the straw we use to keep the weeds down. And look at this guy. Very high in vitamin K. Yeah. So if you're taking blood thinners, you probably don't want to eat kale, right? Because that'll really mess up your blood. Anyone know what that is? Anyone eaten this before? Gosh, it's Sputnik. No. No. This is kohlrabi. What in the world is kohlrabi, and how do you eat it? It's a bulb above ground. It grows above the ground. All the roots are below, and it's got these leaves growing out the top. So you cut it off the ground, or you can pull it up, and you peel it, and it's got white flesh inside. It tastes a little bit like broccoli, and you cube it up, and you steam it, and you eat it with butter. It's really tasty. And there's a purple one. Look how pretty that is. I didn't sell you on kohlrabi, did I? Here's the one person out there who's going to grow kohlrabi. Now lettuce is a whole ball game. Remember I said salads don't have to be ugly anymore? Look at all the different types of lettuces that we can grow now. Black-seeded Simpson is an old standby. It's been around forever, and it's very easy to grow. The real secret to growing lettuce is to make sure that you only have one plant in a space. If you try to grow two, you're going to think you're going to get twice as many. You're not going to get anything. So when the seeds come up, you have to make sure that you thin them. You only have one plant per space, or you're not going to get anything. Look at how beautiful this is. Can you taste that? It tastes buttery almost. And Bambi is a cos, a romaine type. But remember I said there's small varieties of everything? Bambi only gets 7 inches tall, even when it's mature. So if you have a little tiny garden, or if you have a square foot garden and you're trying to grow lettuce, this is probably too big. This is going to be 1 foot square. It's going to take up a lot of space. But these guys are only 6 to 7 inches tall. You can grow a lot of lettuce in a little spot. And one called Bambi. Look how pretty. This almost looks like dandelion, doesn't it? It's kind of pretty. And look how beautiful and dark those leaves are. Now, what you do with this, just like you do with collards, you come in here and you harvest the lower leaves. Or you can do what I did one day. Look how pretty that is. Can you taste it? And I put my face in it. It smelled so good, and I kind of looked around. Nobody was watching, and I went, and I ate the whole thing right there in the middle of the garden. I figured, you know what? I spent all that time growing it. I watered, I fertilized, I deserve a treat.
There you go.
I ate a whole head of lettuce. And it was so good. And this is a leafy type, but it only grows 5 inches across, maturity. So there's a plant out there for you. You just have to find it. Mustard, a lot like collards. You pick the lower leaves off. You cook it with some kind of smoked meat, and there's lots of different kinds. We really like some of those that don't have all the. See how frilly this is? The problem with this is that it holds a lot of sand and a lot of grit, and it's really hard to wash it so much that it's grit free. So try to get those that don't have those frilly leaves on them. And when you use straw, we use bedding straw that they use for horses. It's like $4 a big bale, and we put that underneath things like lettuce and mustard. So when the rain falls or when you irrigate, the water doesn't, and the mud, the dirt doesn't splash back up onto the plants. So you can take a piece of lettuce and go, and it's going to be okay. Or you can grow these lettuce or the mustard, and it's not going to be gritty. It's going to be nice and clean. In onions, there are hundreds of different kinds of onions that'll grow around the world. We have short days, long nights in the wintertime when these plants grow, so you have to buy onions that will grow under those conditions. The best one is one called Granix or Grano. And when you go to some place like Palmer's Feed Store or in Apopka, there's a feed store, wherever you can find what we call sets. They come in big bags and you just pick out the onions that you want, and then you put them in a straight row, half in, half out of the soil. You water them and they start to grow and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. They have to be short day, long night onions or they won't grow here. Now, this are scallions. You see these on TV, you know, they just chop them up and put them in salads and put them in cooked. These are very easy to grow and it doesn't require, these are direct sow, you grow these by seed. But these are really kind of neat. These are like small little white hockey pucks. And a lot of the chefs I've talked to say these are the finest tasting onions in the world. And they grow extremely well here from seed. So as you're going through catalogs, you're going online and looking for seed, don't ignore this guy, because they come in red, yellow, and white. It's kind of neat. I love peas. And sugar snap peas, you can eat the pod and the peas inside. And it's just like candy. When my kids were at home, I never had an English pea make it into the house. They would come home from the school bus, run through the house, run into the vegetable garden, and they would be out, 4 of them. They'd be out there picking peas, just talking about their day, you know. So let's harvest some. Well, there aren't any peas to harvest. They're all gone. They ate them all. And to this day, my son's 36 years old. It's winter time. It's getting a little cool now. Ring, ring. Dad, how are those sugar snap peas coming? Well, you know, Brendan, I didn't plant any sugar snap peas this year. Dad, how are those sugar snap peas? I said, they're ready. Come get them. Come on, just come get them. So you eat the pod and all, and they're just like candy. There's nothing like it in the world. And we grow those up. We grow those on a fence too. And we can grow snow peas too. You see that in Asian dishes where you use it in stir fry. Very, very easy to grow. You can grow these and sugar snaps together on the same fence. Peppers. Just plant them in the ground, full sun, keep them watered, fertilize them every 30 days. Boom, you got peppers. Yes, ma'am.
I have a black thumb. I either drown plants or starve them. I can't seem to find, like the sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
How often would you say water?
Every ground's different. If you live in Hunter's Creek, where it's real mucky, you probably don't want to water but every 3 or 4 days. If you live in Longwood, if you live in Longwood, where it's sugar sand, on an old citrus grove, where it's just beach sand, you have to water every day. So you have to sort of figure out where you're at and decide the best how to do that.
That's how it is mostly around here too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty well drained. Now, there's things you can,
Killer, and I don't want to do it anymore.
you're a pepper killer.
I'm a plant killer.
See, we can help you with that. You need to invite me back and we'll have one of these every week.
Okay.
All right. So, peppers grow from seed or you can get transplants, you put them in the ground. Little secret. Peppers like a little more acidic soil than the rest of the plants. So when you dig a hole and you're ready to put that cute little pepper plant in there, take about a dozen wooden matchsticks, unburned. Take those matches and throw them in the hole. Why do we do that? Sulfur. Sulfur makes the soil a little more acidic. So throw a handful of matches in the bottom of the hole, plant your pepper on top of that, and just water it and keep it in full sun. There are, you can't see them, but I'll guarantee you, you have this. These are chili thrips. They're on roses, they're on peppers, they're on a lot of things. They look like this, but you can't see them. They're tiny, 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 tiny. If you're growing peppers, if you're growing roses, you've got them, you just don't know it. And this is what happens. They get down into the tiny little buds where the foliage is soft and tender and sweet, and they just cause havoc in there. And then when that plant opens up and starts to grow, it's all distorted because this little guy, truly, this is, you can barely see him with the naked eye. And they have a rasping mouth part, so they don't suck juice, and they don't chew like a caterpillar. This causes a lot of damage. So if you're growing peppers and you don't want this, you're gonna have to spray once a week. But you can spray with ivory soap. Put a tablespoon of ivory soap in a 1-quart sprayer and just spray it once a week. Neem oil from the neem tree that's native to India, just put a little bit of that in the sprayer, and every week just, and that'll it's not going to eradicate them, it's not going to make them disappear, but you're going to have a lot less damage. One more secret. I'm giving all my secrets away. You're not going to buy my book. One little secret. You're going to get a lot of pepper flowers, but they don't produce fruit. Well, that's not good. How do you get them to produce a fruit? Spray the flower with a little Epsom salts. Put a teaspoon of Epsom salts in a quart of water. Every time you got the flowers, spray that flower with Epsom salts. Every flower will produce a pepper. Then you're going to have to decide which peppers you're going to keep and which ones you're going to pick off, because you have too many and you're not going to be able to grow any. But if you have peppers, you're going to look like this, and it's because of that guy right there, called a chili thrip. Radishes. I told you I hate radishes, but they're...
There's no photo. I'm laughing because you said you hate radishes.
Yeah, I'm not showing you any radishes because I hate them. I hate them so much. That's not true. They are so pretty. Look at all the different radishes. Look at this guy. Now this is the typical radish. Red on the outside, white on the inside. That's cherry bell. Look at this guy. He's red on the inside and green on the outside. Remember what we said about that vegetable plate, that fresh vegetable? Put that on the tray. What the heck is that? Oh, I grew that in my garden. Wow, that's pretty cool. What about this guy? That's a daikon. When you go to an Asian restaurant and they have some shredded ginger in a little bowl, little pink stuff. Next to it there's a little shredded white stuff. That's a daikon radish. It's hot. That's what you use when you eat with your food. Daikon radish, we had one in the gardens that was 2.5 feet long and 6 inches around. So they can grow big. But these are right around 9 to 10 inches long and about 1.5 inches or 2 in diameter. And they're very, very tasty. You can actually cook these and have them just like carrots. That's sort of interesting. Black on the inside, polar white on the inside. One of the hottest radishes I've ever tasted. But look how pretty that would be on a vegetable plate. This is one called Easter egg. This is one that we usually have children plant. One, they germinate very fast. Kids, little kids, they need that instant gratification. If they don't go out there the next day and something's not up, they're gonna think this gardening thing is a bunch of hooey. So they've got to have quick response. So radishes are good, and when they pull them up, they're going to be all different colors, just like Easter eggs. I don't know if you get them to eat them, but at least they'll grow them, and that's important. And this one is one of my all-time favorites. It doesn't actually produce a root, but it produces a tall plant, and it produces these seed pods that are about 6 to 8 inches long. They're very crisp, and they taste like a radish, and you chop them up and use them in stir fry. Or you can chop them up and use them in salads, or you can even, at the top of that plant, you can harvest the flowers and put those in your salads for just a little hint of radish flavor. It's called rat tail. And these are just some of the different radishes that we grew at the gardens last year. Aren't they pretty? Still taste bad, but they sure are pretty. Swiss chard, a little more common further north, but this is, you would use just like a green. So in this case, we have all this beautiful green foliage and the red stems. This has the white stems and this has the yellow. There's one called Neon Lights, has all sorts of different colors in it. So you would harvest the individual stems from the outside. Again, you don't harvest the whole thing. Chop up the leaves, steam it, put a little bacon. Everything's good with bacon on it, and then eat it, and it's just fabulous. Turnips. Turnips, I have to tell you, we always eat the roots. And I was living in Tallahassee. I was going to FAMU, and I had a whole bag of turnips. And I'm sitting on my front porch with my rocking chair, and Mr. Bailey, who's one of the gardeners at Leu Gardens, I'm taking the roots and putting them in a pan and taking the tops and putting them into a plastic bag. Now this man is 87 years old. He's eaten some turnips in his day. And he looks at me and says, "What are you doing?" "I'm gonna have turnips for dinner." "What are you doing with the tops?" "I'm throwing them out, putting them in the bag." He's a little guy. "Boy, you're throwing away the wrong part." Because down here, you eat the tops, you eat the greens. In Ohio, you eat the roots. Because you can eat the roots in the wintertime. You can actually harvest them under the snow. So from that day forward, Mr. Bailey and I have had an agreement. I eat greens with my roots now, and he eats roots with his greens. He's never done that before. But so these are some pretty typical turnips. This is just very pretty. You can eat these turnip greens red, and the Tokyo Cross is pure white, and the Royal Purple, all very, very easy to grow. You can eat the tops and the roots. Well, you better, Mr. Bailey will find you. Now, one of the things that really set me off when I was a kid is that my dad would send me out to the vegetable garden to pull weeds because I was bad. Happened rarely because I was a perfect child. But he would send me out there to pull weeds. I hated pulling weeds more than anything in the world. With a hoe, grub a hoe, oh, I hated it. When I was bad, that's what I would do. From that day forward, I swore that I was going to find a way where I could plant a vegetable garden and it wouldn't have any weeds whatsoever. I found a way. And it is so easy. All right, so here you are. This is typical garden, right? You got your cauliflower plant growing there, and all these little weeds start popping up because you fertilized it. You've got compost. You've watered it. It is beautiful soil. The weeds are having a heyday. This is great. Well, they're competing with your broccoli plant for water and nutrients. You spend a lot of money for nutrients, compost you've made. So you don't want the weeds to get any of that food. So this is what you do. A single layer of newspaper. What does this do? Weeds are plants. Plants need sun, water, and dirt. If you get rid of the sun, what happens? They can't grow. Now the plant up here is going to get plenty of sun, right? The plants under here aren't getting anything. So that's all you need to do. Just put a piece of newspaper down. End of story. Isn't the newspaper going to fly away? Even if it gets wet, yeah, it's going to fly. It's going to look stupid. You got newspaper out there. You want to see vegetables. I want it to look like Southern Living Magazine. Right? I want them to stop by and say, ooh, that's front cover right there. So this is what you do. You take that newspaper and you put between the rows. These are little seedlings right here. You take that newspaper and you just slam right up against the stems. So there's no weeds can grow in here. Weeds cannot grow through this newspaper. Physically impossible. They have to have sun. They cannot grow. All right. Oh yeah. Remember the straw I talked about? This is not hay. This is not the big hay. This is straw. Tiny little, it's called salt marsh hay or bahia. It comes in a bale. It's $5 or $6. And a single bale will do half of this stage. That's a lot. Put that over the top of the paper. Why do you do that?
Make it pretty?
The neighbors don't know the newspaper's under there. They think you're a genius. And that's our little secret now, okay? So look at this guy. He's so happy. He's got full sun. He's got water. The water percolates through that newspaper. The fertilizer, if you add fertilizer, it'll percolate through that paper. It's got full sun. There's no weeds now to compete for the water and the nutrients. Everything is going right to this guy. He is soaking up every drop of nutrient, every drop of water. He's in full sun. He is going to grow like nobody's business. Now, this is the important part. Remember I said, when you have lettuce seeds, I don't care how many times you've grown lettuce, you're going to grow too many lettuce seeds. You can grow them in egg cartons. You can make little containers out of toilet paper rolls or paper towel rolls. There's 3 or 4 seeds there. You can only have 1 plant. You aren't going to get 3 really good plants just because there's 3 plants there. You have to get 1 good plant. So what do? You just yank on it and pull it out? No, these are very vulnerable right now. These guys are only 1 inch or 2 tall. So if you just pull them, you're going to disturb the roots of the plant that stays behind. So what you want to do is you want to take a pair of scissors and you cut all but 1 of those from that little piece of egg carton or from that little pot. 1 plant, 1 space. Don't pull them, just cut them right off of the ground. You're going to have this guy left behind. This is what you want. This is not what you want. You won't get anything to eat from here. You'll get plenty to eat from there. Now, let's talk about some assorted problems. You grow squash, right? Gets about 2 inches long. All of a sudden it wrinkles up and falls off. What did I do? What's the problem? Not enough water, not enough sunlight, too much water? No. Remember we talked about male and female flowers before. The female flowers has a little fruit in the back. Remember that? The plant has the ability to know that this fruit hasn't been pollinated by a bee. Those seeds that are inside are not viable. They will not grow. They will not reproduce another plant. The plant says, no seeds. I'm not going to waste my energy. This is going to fall off. It's going to create another female flower in hopes that a bee comes by and pollinates it. So that's pretty common. This is powdery mildew. Powdery mildew is a disease that occurs when nighttime temperatures are between 60 and 65 degrees. That's right now, right? So you have to be careful of this. It looks like somebody came by and sprinkled confectioner sugar on it. And you can use a variety of organic sprays to spray on this and it won't be a problem. But you really want to get to it before it gets to this point. And what are these guys? Look at all these knots all over the roots. Little tiny worms. They're in the soil and they pierce that root and they start sucking the juices and all those nutrients out. And there's thousands and thousands. In a cubic foot of soil, there can be 10,000 nematodes. Some plants get them more than others. Tomatoes, eggplant, things like that, they get nematodes really bad. The real secret is not to plant in the same place every year. So if you're growing okra or you're growing eggplant here, you're obviously going to have a pretty good population of nematodes here now because they've attracted them. So you're going to plant the same thing next year because it's ready-made for them. No, you want to come way over here and plant okra here next year or tomatoes here next year. That's called crop rotation, and it really does help. What also helps, if in the summertime you're not going to grow vegetables, you fluff up your soil with a shovel or a rototiller and then cover it with clear plastic and seal it, and then cook that soil. It'll drive those nematodes down into the ground for at least a year. I mean, they'll come back, but for at least a year, you'll have virtually nematode-free roots. Because ultimately, this is what you want your garden to look like, right? Individual plants, nice straw. You don't have to wash these guys. There's no bugs. These have never been sprayed. All of the plants are getting every drop of nutrient and every drop of water. The dirt isn't splashing back up on the leaves. These plants don't even have to be washed because you know they haven't sprayed them with anything, and they don't have the dirt. So it's very, very easy way to grow vegetables. And you can even get a little fancy if you want. You go green, red, and that's kind of neat too.